Welcome to Regulate This, a really unfiltered podcast.
Welcome to Regulate This. I'm your host, Leila Shaver, and I'm here with my co-host, Tracie Bear. Say hey, Tracie.
Hello, everybody. Happy to be here. Happy to be discussing really important things.
I like what you did there, Tracie. So we're talking about a really important topic today, and that is dealing with complaints like a pro. And I'm not talking about employee complaints. I'm not talking about vendor complaints. I'm talking about complaints from your clients. And we want to talk about how to turn those complaints into opportunities for stronger relationships. So what say you, Tracie?
Well, I say there's lots of ways to turn those frowns upside down to get those into some smiles. The biggest thing, I think, is to listen to hear and not listen to speak. So often when somebody calls and gives us news that we don't want to hear or things that we don't hope to hear about ourselves, about our team, about the way in which we're doing things, we go on the defensive. And so we're not really listening to what they're saying to hear. We're listening so that we can comment and push down anything they say to make it okay. And sometimes the solution is really just the person wanting to be heard. They don't even need some big extravagant show of, concern or some big discount or something where you're rolling out the red carpet. It's that they want to feel human. They want to feel like they're important and what they say matters. So the first step is always to have listening ears on. From there, you have to be super curious. So once you've listened generally to what they had to say, start asking appropriate questions to try to determine, is it a deficit in maybe a process? Is it something that was completely out of character for the team member, for the situation? Is it something that has other repercussions and there's a reason it was handled in the way it was? But without getting the facts, you'll never know, and then you're just going to make a decision based on assumptions, and we know what that does. So we want to avoid it being us, right? And the best way to do that is to get the facts so that you have a clear picture of what happened. And then you can make a determination of how you handle it, or have the discussion with the client that simply states, I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. I'm going to go ahead and do some internal research, figure out, how we can do better next time or what we need to do to improve, if anything. And I'm going to circle back with you once I have, a better understanding of what happened on our end. So it isn't even that you have to make a quick decision, but you get more grace once you've built that rapport by actually letting someone else speak and then asking them follow-up questions to get all of the data from their perspective so that they feel fully heard and acknowledged. Would you agree, or would you add anything to those first couple of steps?
No, I think you're right. I think it's really important to talk to the client because, to your point, a lot of times they just want to vent. They want to vent, they want to get it out, they want to feel heard, and they want to feel like an action is going to be taken. And sometimes it's not even an action, it's just an apology, right? It could even be something, about something you can't even control, right? Like we see this a lot with delays or issues at the custodial level, and the client calls the advisor and is yelling at the advisor. And the advisor's like, what did I do? I have no control over this. We took whatever you sent, submitted it to the custodian. At that point, it's off our hands. But it's really about letting the client vent, apologizing, and oftentimes that's enough. But the whole point of this too is that, as an RIA, firms have to look into client complaints. And most client complaints, it's not anything that's a breach of fiduciary duty, or there was fraud or misrepresentation or something like that. Oftentimes it's a service-related issue, right? Someone was supposed to call me back, they didn't. Someone was supposed to do this, they didn't. Someone said that this would get done within 24 hours or by the end of the week. It didn't. I haven't seen it. a lot of times it's these service issues. So, we talk about dealing with them while there's still small issues, giving the client opportunity essentially to have a catharsis, right? To express themselves and feel this release of emotion, because you don't want it to escalate and become an issue later. Because if it is a genuine complaint about a breach of fiduciary duty or about fraud or some sort of misrepresentation or something you did that was unsuitable or not in their best interest, then it becomes a problem, and you want to do what you can to mitigate that risk and prevent it from escalating and becoming a more formal issue. So not just talking to the client about what happened, but talking to the advisor, going through and pulling emails, going through your client file, pulling documentation and information. Because as the old story goes, it's he said, she said, and then the truth, right? There are 3 sides to every story. So you want to make sure that you're addressing their concerns, but you also want to find out, is this something we could have prevented? Is this something that we need to do operationally, a change? Is this a compliance tweak we need to make? Maybe it's just a conversation with the advisor. Or maybe it's a sign of a bigger issue. Maybe there's cognitive issues with an older client and they called in, they're angry, they don't remember the conversation that you guys had about strategy. So all these things are super important, not just talking to the client, but doing some in-depth kind of research and information gathering as well.
I think to your point, Leila, there's also something that is beneficial to your organization if you do that as well. Because if somebody comes, sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. And so if somebody comes in and says, hey, XYZ advisor said they were going to call me on Friday with an update, or they said they were going to do a certain thing by a certain time, or I would receive something at a certain time, and they're not. Is that an isolated incident? Is it something with the advisor? Is there a best practice that's not happening? Is it something that maybe we need to institute that we haven't? Is it a training issue? Is there an internal function or a functionality that's being missed, whether it's through technology or through process or through a procedure? Do we have, the seats filled that need to assist with this type of thing? I mean, there are a lot of internal business and business practice decisions that will help you amplify what you're doing and really up your game with your clientele if you're able to tweak before it becomes this big cavernous cave filled with problems and old hopes and dreams that have now gone to die, right? Instead, we're able to take those when it's a little bump, we're able to smooth them out, fix it, and keep going on the right path. And we don't have this pile of bodies buried that we now have to exhume and fix. So it not only helps us build rapport and trust and all of that confidence with the client that's so important, especially if we expect repeat business or ask for referral business, which is the best and easiest business to close. But it's also making sure that internally you're always upping your game, you're always doing better, you're always expanding your processes in a positive way and getting rid of stuff that's antiquated or not working, or, frankly, you're making sure you're holding people accountable to have the standard and the expectation to be consistent and reliable when they're delivering services to the clients that you pay so much and fight so hard to get in this industry.
No, you're absolutely right. So you want to do your best to keep clients happy, but let's be real, Tracie, not every client's the right fit, right? So I think it's also important to look at the nature of the complaint, look at how frequently the complaint is lodged by that client or others. And I say this because, we have clients that do a lot of, for example, radio shows or podcasts. They've got YouTube channels. They've got content they're putting out consistently and regularly. And it's going to a wide variety of people, but not all the people listening in or tuning in are the right fit for the firm. So you're getting all these leads from these marketing channels. They're coming in, and then you end up in a scenario where they're complaining about, frankly, the way your company does business. And it's like, well, this is our strategy. We're not day traders, or we don't do tax planning, or managing a portfolio means managing our models and rebalancing. It doesn't mean every day we're buy selling. This isn't trading spaces, right? Like, we're not on the Wall Street floor, buy, sell frozen orange juice. Like, come on, guys. So I think, that's important too, to use these complaints as an opportunity to say, hey, maybe we're just not a right fit. Because at the end of the day, you want to reduce risk and liability.
Definitely. And I think, through the things that we talked about earlier, just to recap, we talked about listening, hear what they have to say, hear what the client has to say, take it in, take notes, because I hate to tell you, but even the people with the best memories, when it's an emotional situation where there's sometimes volatility or vulnerability, we don't have our best memories. And if we do get on the defensive track where it's like, oh, they're telling me something that I hoped not to hear, sometimes the way that we remember it is different as well. So definitely make sure you're listening and acknowledging what's happening. Doesn't mean you have to say the client's right. It doesn't mean you have to agree, but acknowledging you at least hear what they're saying and that you're taking it in. Then from there, being curious, doing both the internal investigation to say, is this founded? Is it not founded? Is this a pattern? Is this a one-off? Is this something we need to adjust in our business? Is this something we need to adjust with our client expectations? Do we need to look at having different clients? Do we need to look at modifying our business in any way to better suit the ideal client? All of those things, and even seeing, do we have the right seats on the bus filled internally? Maybe at times it's not the right client, and sometimes at times it's not the right advisor. That maybe at some point the clientele we had was correct for what we were trying to achieve, but we've since passed that mark and no longer have the same goals or desires. And so now we're looking at something different, and we need to make sure that our client base aligns with that. But we also need to make sure our workforce aligns with that. If we started and we thought we were going to be moving in one direction and we filled, our whole workforce with people that aligned with that, and now we've made a departure and decided to go somewhere else, but everybody's still aligned with the old model, and we haven't been able to shift them or move them to a new model or a new standard, that could also create chaos and trouble. But even just focusing on those two things, having listening ears and being curious, gets you to all of those points. And then it allows you to be able to make a thoughtful decision and be able to communicate that both internally and externally. Internally to your team and externally to your clients, and be able to have those really serious discussions about what we can do, what we can't do, what expectations need to move forward, what we expect from the client, and what we expect from ourselves. And then we're able to hold each other accountable.
Well, and remember too, when it comes to these client complaints, there's always the regulatory responsibility as well. So you've got to look into these complaints and identify whether there's a disclosable event, right? Whether there's any potential for legal risk for your firm, whether there's any compliance risk for your firm. So the complaints, no matter what the nature of it, to your point, it could be smoke, signaling a bigger fire or issue going on with your firm. So as benign or simple or frankly bullshit as a complaint may seem, every single one should be taken seriously and investigated. And then of course, like we always say, if you don't document it, it didn't happen. So that's where you have your client complaint log. That's where you are documenting your efforts to look into it. That's where you're having conversations with the advisor, the client, you're pulling those emails and documenting it. Because there's nothing stronger than being able to say, hey, I took your complaint, I investigated, I looked into it, I didn't find any violations of our policies and procedures, I don't see any violations of state or federal law in relation to this complaint. Because then if it does, for whatever reason, escalate and become a formal legal demand letter or a formal legal action, you can present to any arbitration panel or judge or jury that, hey, look at all the work we did in advance. Look at all the analysis we did. Look at who we talked to. And this is where we got to. So it's super important. At the end of the day, RAs carry so much risk, and the role of compliance nerds like us is to constantly find ways to reduce that risk, to modify operations so that there are fewer incidences that create additional risk for the firm. So if it's as simple as picking up the phone, even if it's not your fault, and being like, I'm sorry you had that experience. I'm sorry the custodian didn't get back to you in time. Let me see what I can do. Let me see how I can assist you with this matter. Let me see how I can help. Let me see how I can improve this. But then actually do what you say, right? So if you say you're gonna follow the fuck back up.
Well, yeah, and I think the beautiful thing about all of this is it's how you look at it. It's not a negative. A complaint is actually a positive because it gives you an opportunity. What's scary is when people don't complain, because then what they're doing is they're moving with their feet, not their mouth. Right? And the people that don't tell you that leave are the people that will tell everybody else, but not have the gall to come to you and share. So this is a real opportunity to handle these complaints like a pro, to be able to do the things we talked about, but then turn it on a dime. Be able to take that rapport you've just built, let the client know you care, and let them know what you're gonna do about it, if anything. And if not, let them know that they've at least been heard, where you stand, why you stand in that position, and how you think you can bridge the gap moving forward. It gives you an opportunity to actually get more business. I can tell you, even in our business, I've had a client before that needed to speak to me, and it was escalated up to me as the managing director, and I got on and spoke to that client, and not only were we able to navigate what the experience was for that particular client, but we were also able to figure out a few other areas that we could help the client and better suit that client's needs to move forward in the direction that they needed to go in. And so we were able to handle the situation that they were displeased about. We were able to correct it and mitigate that and do our internal research to make sure that we had everything the way that we needed it to be for not only that client but other clients as well. And then we were able to move into additional ways we could help the client. So we salvaged the relationship, increased the trust and the confidence component, and are actually doing additional business. And that client has also referred people. So if I would have just blown it off or said, okay, thanks a lot, or whatever, and not taken it seriously, not only could I have that person go out and speak terribly about us and ruin our reputation, but I also wouldn't have had all this great insight into ways we could improve our business, make it better, handle our clients in a more impactful way, and do additional business with this person. Like, they gave us a gift on sharing this, and it's how you look at it. If you look at it that way, you'll handle it that way. If you look at it as something negative, we often handle it that way, right? So turn these things into a positive. What benefit is it for you to hear about things that could be improved, to hear about concerns that your clients have, to hear about concerns maybe that are out there that your people that you shouldn't be doing business with have, so you can better identify those people when you're trying to make a decision on if you're the right fit to handle their investment needs, and if they think you're the right fit for them as well. So it has to be a mutually beneficial relationship. And sometimes it's this type of stuff that lets you determine if that's true or false.
Well, I think that's also why it's so important that the people you have taking these calls, right? Because oftentimes these client complaints come in to your client services people, right? Someone calls for an updated ID, or hey, I need you to sign this account document. I need to follow up and send you this report or something. A lot of times it's the client services folks that are talking to clients on a more regular and consistent basis, and they're hearing the complaints. So this is where it's really important to train your client services folks on how to deal with these complaints. stressing the importance of really listening and letting them vent, apologizing. Even if it's not your fault, even if it's not the firm's fault, just apologize. I'm sorry you had that experience, right? That's not our goal for you to have that experience, right? You know, like help them feel like they're being heard, and that's so, so important. But we all know client services folks, that shouldn't be client services folks. Like, how many times have you called into customer service for a company, the water company, a government agency, Amazon, wherever it is you're calling in, and you're like, you shouldn't be in customer service. You are aggressive, you're rude, you're short, you're pissing me off even more. You know what I mean? So I think it's even more important, especially times like now where we're seeing market volatility. We've got these wars going on. We've got these interest rates not being cut. We're dealing with a lot of we're dealing with a lot of world events that are causing fear and causing changes every day to the market. You know, one day you're down, one day you're up, one day you finally net neutraled out. You know, these are things that clients are looking at. When things are good, you don't hear a peep. But when things start getting bumpy, they're down, you hear from it. I think that's really important too, from the perspective of nip this in the bud, beat them to it, communicate regularly with your clients, get out communications when things happen, right? So as of the recording of this podcast, you know, we dealt with the conflict between Israel and Iran, how much fear that created, right? How much we're worried about the price of oil and how's that going to affect price of gas, what's going to happen to the Strait of Hormuz. Like, I don't care about your political beliefs, but when these international events just pop up and happen, it's incumbent upon you guys as the advisors in the firms to get ahead and communicate, because your clients are freaking the fuck out. They're looking at they're logging into their accounts and being like, what's going on? What's happening to my investments? Are they up or down, right? And especially like if you have a client like my mother or my mother-in-law, who both retired earlier this year, they're sitting there like, shit, I have a fixed income now. I can't afford for my portfolio to drop 10, 20%, because that's what I'm banking on living off of for the next 20, 30 years.
Right. I think another point is there are things within your control before any of this stuff happens. You can do some self-development. You can help develop your team for those of you that are firm owners. I know for us, we do retreats. We've studied the power of TED. We've studied the 3 vital questions, ways that we could be more effective, more efficient, the way to meet people where they are, the way to understand when somebody comes at you in that kind of victim mentality, how you don't get sucked in, but you're able to coach them through it, how you're able to help challenge some of the things they're saying in a positive way and become, more of a person that's giving them an opportunity for growth. We all come with baggage. We all come with things from the way we were raised all the way through experiences that we've had and dealings that we've had with people, and it really shapes us into who we are and the way we deal with things. And there are different things also that trigger us that sometimes make us not our best selves. And we don't even acknowledge those things all the time because it's just something that's there that we haven't really scratched the surface on. So in some ways, if you have good employees, if you have people that you think are worth investing in, we're willing to buy new computers that are outdated and considered a dinosaur in 6 months, but we don't invest in our people all the time. We look at all that software and things as investments when truly that's an expense. Your people are your investment, not an expense. So invest in those types of things. Invest in things that will help them develop their EQ to better serve people and service people, especially now in an industry where people can go out and do it on their own and pay nothing or next to nothing, in comparison to the fees that they're being charged elsewhere. So you have to have things that make people feel like they're being seen, they're being heard, they're being acknowledged, but also that you have the right people that are able to navigate that and do it, because you're not going to be there as a hand holder all the time, or else your business is going to be very small, because that's the only way you can function and hold everybody's hand, is if you don't grow. So, invest in your people too. If you have questions for us about that type of stuff, be more than happy to talk to you. Reach out to us. You can look at our website, www.myralawyer.com, and you're able to fill out forms. You're able to talk to us if you need some of those types of services as well. I think there are just so many things that you're able to do that are within your control before anybody pitches a fit, before anybody is rubbed the wrong way in any sense or form. So, to recap, basically today we've talked about how to handle complaints like a pro. We talked about listening for what's actually being said and not just to respond. We talked about curiosity. We talked about documenting, because if you don't, it didn't happen. We talked about sometimes there are regulatory things you have to do, but there are things that you should do as well. Make sure that you're acknowledging those things with clients, and then make sure that you're actually responsive and doing what you say you're going to do. Because staying compliant is not just about following the rules. It's about building trust and integrity in your business. And the more you do that, the more rapport you build, and the better chance you have in those relationships of growing, expanding, and even getting additional business, or having them give you their friends and family and people that you can help as well.
And you know what? At the end of the day, we're in a service industry, right? And a lot of times the hardest part of that is people, dealing with people. But that's kind of the work we do, right? We're not selling hamburgers, we're not selling widgets, we're not selling car parts. We are providing services to these clients. So making sure that you create a system of follow-up communication, making sure that you're exhibiting that emotional intelligence is super important, because at the end of the day, it does have a regulatory and legal impact beyond just kind of a business impact on you and your reputation. So lots of things to consider when we're talking about client complaints. But I don't think we've said anything here today, Tracie, that anyone should take as, oh God, just one more thing. Like, I can't do all this. Nothing difficult, very simple strategies. Frankly, the kinds of things that any business in any industry should be doing to continue to service their clients and grow in a healthy way.
Definitely. It's about checking the pulse of the people. It doesn't matter what you think. It matters what's actually happening, what people are doing, what they're seeing, how they're feeling. You can think it's A-okay, but if all of your clients are dissatisfied, pretty soon you won't think it's A-okay when your pocketbook tells you can't afford anything, right? You're losing people left and right, or you're having to spend exponentially more to make up for a poor reputation in order to bring in clients. So this is all just gravy. It's all stuff that you should be doing regularly anyway, and why not make the most of it? Plus, it's a regulatory requirement that if you get a complaint, that you investigate it and you remediate it if there's a finding. So, good compliance is good business, and the only way to stay in business is to stay compliant.
Hopefully you found this episode of Regulate This, a really unfiltered podcast, informative and helpful, and hopefully there is at least one or two things that you can take from today to implement in your own business if you're not already. But I would certainly take, especially in today's climate, an opportunity to really evaluate how you're communicating with clients, how your client services folks are communicating with clients, because you want to be able to turn an angry client into a happy referring client. Thank you for listening to Regulate This, a really unfiltered podcast. Make sure to check out this episode and other episodes on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you for spending a little bit of your time with us today. Talk to you soon. So, hopefully you found this episode.